Welcome everybody to Tales from the Jar Side, the video series. Don't have time to read my newsletter? That's okay, I'll be happy to read it to you. This week the title is Tales from the Jar Side, Spring with AI, Chat with GPT, moving to foojay.social, LinkedIn spam, AssertJ in Polish, and my inevitable commentary on the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift relationship. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. The subtitle this week says, "My wife kissed me on the sofa and said, 'Let's take this upstairs.' I replied, 'Okay, if you really want. You grab one end, I'll grab the other, and maybe we can get the boy to help turn the corner.'" Yeah, okay, whatever. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of October 1st through 8th, 2023. This week I had a 2-day functional programming in Java course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the attached button. Now that's usually our cue to take a look at the YouTube channel as well, so let me bring that up. Here's the YouTube channel located at youtube.com/@talesfromthejarside, and it appears that I have had a little burst of subscribers, and I'm now up to 793 subscribers. They list me as having 128 videos, which sounds like a lot. I think that may be an overestimate, but that counts shorts and live streams and everything. So that's very interesting. The big one this week is the one here entitled Spring and AI Without SpringAI, Chat with GPT. This one I'm going to talk about a bit in detail. Now I will mention that under the Shorts tab, I did put up a couple of new shorts, one of which was something I promised last week, and another one was a variation on that. I've been using this tool called HeyGen, Heygen, in order to translate some of my shorts into other languages. The first one I did was in Hindi, and you can see that got a fair number of views, even though the translation quality was a little dicey. So I tried one that was at least a European language. I used Dutch for another one, and that made it through the process relatively quickly, and not too many people saw it. And then I tried one very recently in Polish, as it turned out. So they're all three there, and they are of varying quality. I did get some feedback on the translation. I'll talk about that in a moment. Let's go back to the newsletter. So this first section is talking about, accessing AI tools using Spring without involving the SpringAI project. The SpringAI project is a project being developed by the people managing the Spring framework, and it's based on the same ideas covered in the LangChain project, which is a big one in the Python world. It's got all kinds of powerful capabilities to it. And there's now a LangChain 4J project, which was announced to somewhat great fanfare last week at the DevOps conference. I did watch a couple videos from that, and that was quite interesting. It's something I'll be looking at in the future. But you can see there's a competitor to LangChain 4J coming directly from Spring called SpringAI. My philosophy is look, if you don't want to wait until all that is ready, then you can treat a lot of these AI tools as just another RESTful web service. And with the recent additions to Java, things like the HTTP client and records and text blocks and so on, you can actually just access them right now and do whatever you need to do quickly. And then later, even if you do wind up adopting one of those tools, you know what's going on under the hood, and you have your own experience working with the concept, so you know where they're headed with it. I should mention this is another one of those robots that was generated using Midjourney. I said I wanted a happy robot jumping on springs, and I don't know that I got the spring stuff very much, although it looks like it's in the arms and legs, but it looked like a happy robot, so what the heck. So Chat with GPT. I've been planning this one for a while, but other activities kept interfering. So I'm pretty happy with what we got. Now, I don't know why this tool I use for embedding code in here decided to pick red for annotations, and the red on black is just not showing up very well. Now what I have here is a Spring Boot application that is under the title OpenAI Client, and this is in my GitHub repository under my last name. So github.com/KOUSEN/OpenAI Client. And this is the app that I'm slowly recreating as a series of videos. But if you want to see the endpoint, if you will, although I don't promise to not keep modifying it, as we go along, you can go directly to that GitHub repository now. And one of the things I have in here is OpenAI interface. Let me close this. Now this is what the Spring people call an HTTP exchange interface. So all I have to do is put in various interface methods and configure a bean to represent the web client, and Spring will do all the networking for me, and then we'll even try to do the transformation from strings into Java classes using the JSON parser that's built into Spring projects. So what I did in a previous video is I listed the various models at the OpenAI site and got back a model list. This is a record that I created that looks like this, a record here that has a list of model in it, and then the model is a record with ID created and owned by. I didn't show this in the video, but this is a way to override the toString method, so it takes that Unix timestamp and converts it into a Java local date time. So just in case you're interested in that, just for the printout, I did it. The other interesting part which does come up is this JSON naming annotation. That's my way of converting snake case in the JSON data into camel case inside the Java code. If I was using regular old POJOs, then I'd merely have to set a particular property in application.properties and it would work everywhere. But this is records, and records are really convenient, but there's some quirks with them, and the JSON parser doesn't seem to do that conversion properly in a Spring app. So I had this one in the previous app. What I've added now is a get chat response with a chat request and returning a chat response here. And this chat request comes in the body of the request, and there's a different endpoint. I did specify the accept and content type headers in the request. Don't know that I really needed them there, but it certainly didn't hurt anything. And if you look at the chat request, it's just a string model with a list of message objects and a temperature, and a message is just a combination of content. And I showed a role here, but that is an enum in my repository, but in the video I basically kept it as a string just to keep it simple. That message is reused in the response as well. So if I go back to the response, in this case, you see that I have an ID and an object and a created date. There's the timestamp and the model that was actually used. And then these are the important ones. The usage item will tell you how many tokens you used up, and a list of choice here. This thing that comes back as a choice that has a message and a finish reason and an index. The finish reason should be stop. The index is always going to be 0 because they only have one choice, as it turns out, and there's that message. So that's really all I needed to do, was configure the request and the response, and then I could just say, hey, I'm going to send you a chat request and give me back a chat response. And the only other piece of this that I need is to configure the web client. If you're interested in the details, I cover a lot of that in the video. And if I look at the test here, you can see I can do a chat request that says, say this is a test. And when I execute this, then it should come back with, yes, this is in fact a test. By default here, I believe I'm using GPT 3.5, I think. And if I look at this, you see, yes, in fact, it did complete successfully. There was the post request, and you can see the number of tokens I used up was 18. 13 on the input and 5 on the output. Works just fine. Now, there's a couple of quirks that I added in here, because you can see, for example, that it's a little annoying having to walk down the tree in order to get the response every time. So what I showed in the video is that you can add a default method to an interface here to go ahead and walk the tree for you. So you supply the chat response and it automatically extracts the answer out of it. That's fine. As you can see here, I also have default methods to create a request with the GPT 3.5 turbo type, and also I have one for an image request that'll come later. So my point is you can add default methods to make your API simpler without actually affecting the ability of Spring to take this interface and create the implementation class from it. And that's really what we were after. So I have two tests here for the OpenAI interface. One calls, say this is a test, so that's using the default parameters, and then I get back the response. I'll print out the usage, and then you see this is the painful mechanism you have to go through to go down and navigate to the answer. But I have a second test here that is basically the same thing, except this time I call that default method in the interface, the extract string response method, and that works just fine. The step I took after that is to go to the OpenAI service. I made a service as well, because the one thing a service can have that interfaces can't is state variables, is attributes. Now I have a couple of constants here to make sure I don't pick a bad model, for example, but I also have an attribute here, which is the list of available model names. When the service is instantiated, I'm calling my getModelNames method that I talked about last time in order to retrieve all the model names from the model, and now, or from the service rather, and I cache them. So when I call get a chat response, I'm able to check and make sure that the model I put in is in fact the one I want. This, of course, happened because I got burned. I accidentally put in GPT-4 instead of GPT-4, or the other way around, whichever one is valid here, and whichever one's invalid, and then I fixed this mechanism here. So this is a little check to make sure that I put it in correctly. And now I can get make a request and get the response and log the usage and extract this. And in my test class over here, I can now say, okay, let's go ahead and get the chat response from GPT-4 and go ahead and get the answer and log it and make sure that passes as well. And sure enough, the ultimate answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. And that cost me 50 tokens this time because GPT-4 is that much more expensive than GPT 3.5. It's about 20 times more expensive, interestingly enough. So far, so good. That's basically the idea. So you can see the tests and everything and the outputs, and it all worked. And then I discussed a little bit about that problem I had validating the dependencies, and I'd put in the value of a model name without the dash when it required the dash, and I got an error. And then the error said, here's the URL you're going to, and I tried clicking on it. Of course, it complained that I hadn't submitted an authorization header, which now I realize, yeah, of course, I clicked on it. It doesn't have an authorization header. Unfortunately, I thought that meant that my original request, the error was I hadn't sent an authorization header, and I thought something went wrong with the auto wiring, and it cost me, I don't know, an hour to realize that no, you're being an idiot or you're missing it. It's fine. And that's what I called down to my wife, hey, I fixed the problem. And she's, really, what was it? I'm blind or an idiot or both. And she's like, okay. So we've been married 33 years as of Saturday. So yeah, we understand each other. So that's why I now have those constants. And I realize now, looking at this, I put in the wrong constant here. So I put in GPT-3.4. No, that's wrong. It should be GPT-4. And I've now fixed that. And it's got the right one in the GitHub repository. So, when I generated the commit message using the AI assistant in IntelliJ IDEA, it said replace hard-coded model names with constants and to avoid misspellings and all of that. Yeah, okay. Today is Monday, October 9th. Tomorrow I'm teaching a training class called Practical AI Tools for Job Developers. I think I'm going to have to change the name of that because that sounds like I'm using the AI tools to make Java development better, and that's not what it's after. But what the class is about is how to integrate with those AI tools, much like what I just showed you. And I was hoping to use some of this stuff that I just did in that course, but if they don't have a Spring background, then I won't do that. I'll just use my OpenAI demo repository, which does all the networking and everything by hand. I use the HTTP client from Java and the JSON parser from Google and pretty much write everything out. Again, it's a useful exercise. It's good to know, especially because even, LangChain and SpringAI, it's going to be a while before they have all the capabilities I'd like to try, like Whisper translations and Dolly image generation and everything. So we'll see how that goes. And in the meantime, I've got the videos in case you're interested. Let's move on to the next section. I've got a couple of transitions that went on this week. For one, I decided to move from Mastodon.social to the foojay.social Mastodon service. Now, when you join Mastodon, here's a picture of what you see. They didn't used to have this giant button over here that said join Mastodon.social. There, I can magnify that a bit. This is at joinmastodon.org. I remember when I had to pick a server, I was like, how do I know one server from another? And that was very intimidating. And it turns out now they say, well, here's a default. You could just pick that. And this is something that tons of people have joined. And the problem is having a centralized major server like that kind of goes against the whole philosophy of Mastodon. It's part of the Fediverse. It's a bunch of federated servers and other services that can work together. And the best analogy I've seen is think of it like email. You do have to register somewhere to get an email address, whether it be Gmail or some other service. But that doesn't mean you can't send and receive email from everybody. It's just a domain that's going to be on your email address that's going to be there a while. And if you change it, it's like changing an email address, although hopefully not that disruptive. Well, I decided it was time to get off of Mastodon.social. It was time to look for a different server. And there are many, many, many servers out there, and you could even run your own if you want. But I knew I didn't want to deal with that. So instead of picking one of the giant ones. Again, the idea is to avoid putting so many eggs in a single basket in Mastodon land. The whole concept of having a single provider or a single server have so much impact is what led to, the collapse of Twitter and the vulnerability, therefore, also of places like Blue Sky, which again are under the thumb of a single person or a single organization. I just decided to pick a relatively small one that looks like it's in there for the long haul and is very friendly and helpful. And that's when I picked foojay. Now, foojay actually stands for Friends of OpenJDK. The OpenJDK project is the open source version of Java. In fact, Oracle open source Java, almost all of it, and the Oracle JDK and the OpenJDK version are virtually identical. There's only very minor differences as you go. So I spent a lot of time with OpenJDK. I use an OpenJDK build, and I use a couple different ones actually. And I remember when foojay.io came about, that's the main site for talking about blogs. They actually have a lot of blog posts talking about Java. Well, now there's foojay.social server. So I contacted the administrator and said, is it okay if I join? And he was like, sure, come on in. So I submitted the request and got in very quickly. And then I went through the migration process. I downloaded all of my archive stuff from the old server, and I told the old one about the new one and the new one about the old one. And that ported over most of the settings, but unfortunately not quite everything. So my new Mastodon address is this one, which is foojay.social/@KenCousin. Same ID pretty much everywhere. So most of my follow list migrated, most of my followers list, but I wound up getting like a few hundred notifications in my email. I'm like, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I did lose the favorites list, my liked ones, and I didn't see any way to import that from the archive that I extracted. But I'm doing them gradually. Since I have that archive, I was able to fire up a tool that comes with Java 18 called JWebServer, and that way I could access them as links in my browser. They look something like this. I mean, I'm just accessing them all, as this ordered collection, and this is just the downloaded list as I went along. But you can see there's a lot, and I have a placeholder setting how far along I've reviewed them. It's kind of fun to go through the old ones because there's a lot of humor and stuff that I bookmarked, you know. But I don't know if I'll probably give up on it. But so far I'm going through them one by one. Now I did another transition, and that is on my LinkedIn profile. So here's what that looks like in case you're interested. So this is my LinkedIn profile, linkedin.com/IN, yes, /Ken Cousin again. So you're welcome to send me, friend requests or whatever they call it here, try to connect or what have you. And when I needed this because I was filling out a proposal for a conference talk and they wanted my LinkedIn connection information. I went, okay, but I was looking at this and realized I had not yet added the position I have now at Trinity College in Hartford, where I'm teaching that class as an adjunct. So as you can see here, I went to the trouble of actually adding it. I added visiting assistant professor, and I searched for and found Trinity College and was able to go ahead and add that. What I didn't realize is that all I was trying to do was update my list here. I didn't realize it was then going to spam my entire network and say, hey, he's got a new position, send congratulations. And I'm like, well, I mean, okay, I don't mind getting congratulated or whatever, but it's a part-time gig teaching a class. I do like it. I'm really glad I'm there. It may expand into something later. Who knows? But right now, it's just, I didn't mean to spam everybody. but LinkedIn wound up doing that. Now, I'm looking at this and I noticed there's an issue here down here under No Fluff Just Stuff, of course, where I still speak on the conference tour. They've got that weird default icon showing that apparently they haven't connected to the No Fluff Just Stuff actual item. Now, they used to, so I don't know what changed. I'm afraid to try to fix it because I'm afraid if I fix it, it'll wind up spamming everybody all over again. So we'll see. I'll get around to it. My view on LinkedIn invitations, by the way, connection requests, is that as long as you're not obviously a recruiter or you're not obviously trying to sell me, developer services or something like that, then I usually just say sure, because, the more the merrier. It doesn't bother me to connect to people there. And it's good to have people that you can talk to. This site has turned out to be a lot more useful than I expected, as it turns out, interestingly enough. Okay, enough of that. Next section. I told you about that HeyGen site. It's at, here it is. It's at HeyGen, HeyGen Labs. And it logged me right in here. This is at HeyGen Labs. And you drag a video file on here and say translate it. When you say translate, it says, what language do you want to translate to? And they don't have a ton of them, but they've got a dozen or so. And the first one I did was in Hindi. And I posted that a couple weeks ago. And then I did one last week in Dutch. And this is the new one that's in Polish. And that's what I included here. Now, I have 2 credits at the moment, which is worth 2-minute video. And that's what's embedded here. It's entertaining. I'm not going to subscribe because they want like $50 a month. And it's still very limited even with that. And in fact, I got really good feedback when I sent out the newsletter because a friend of mine who is in fact in Poland and obviously is a native Polish speaker, his reply is that it's not bad, but it's not great either, the translation. And in fact, most Polish technical people are so familiar with English that in fact, listening to a mediocre Polish translation is actually harder on them than giving them the native English, which they can generally follow because they're accustomed to doing that. So if anything, that convinced me that, yeah, it's a fun little exercise, but it's nothing I'm going to do on a regular basis. But it was kind of entertaining, and I thought you might find it interesting. Okay, let me move on to our Toots and Tweets and Skeets, oh my, whatever, the whole collection of social media posts. Look, I know nobody wanted this. I know this is silly, but here's my introduction to this section. I spend a lot of time talking about technical topics, especially recently. But I know why most of you are here. I have no data or other evidence to prove it, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if the vast majority of my readers skip directly to my weekly collection of funny and or interesting social media posts. Given that, and given that I'm an old white guy who has been following the NFL for decades, literally, and whose musical tastes were formed either late in the Jurassic or early in the Cretaceous periods, I feel it's time to give the people what they want, which means it's time for me to give you my hot takes on the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift relationship. Look, I know this is silly. I thought it was funny. I thought it would be entertaining, because what's really entertaining, this is effectively a parody on all those old white guys, especially the curmudgeonly ones who are NFL fans who are annoyed by this distraction, or annoyed by Taylor Swift for some reason, or I can't even imagine why, annoyed by Travis Kelce, although I think he was one of the few teammates. Actually, I don't think he was a teammate, but he actually kneeled during that national anthem issue the same way Colin Kaepernick did. And he did that in support of his friend, and probably for the cause as well, hopefully. I mean, I think it was significant to him. At any rate, here's my take on it, if you will. This picture I found at a site that's called Deadline or whatever. I'm not recommending it. I just happened to find it. And it's got the two of them together, both in red, which is nice. And I love this NFL statement that said NFL is defending its recent coverage of Taylor Swift and Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce's rumored romance amid criticism from football fans and even Kelce, who said he believes the league is, quote, overdoing it and needs to calm down a bit. Oh, yeah. And of course, they threw in more marketing stuff. Yeah, I'm never wild when they go to crowd shots during the game. I find that distracting. I just want to see the game. Of course, football's got all these interruptions in it, and even baseball is worse, you know. But NBA is where I really hate it when they go to crowd shots, because NBA is a game of flow. You really want to see what's going on and how people are running back and getting set up, and if there's a chance at a break and all that kind of stuff. And instead, they feel obligated to show the crowd. Now, in the NFL, you've got committee meetings between every play, as one comedian referred to it. I get it. But my opinion about them is, hey, good for them. What do I care? You know, I mean, the heck with the salivating NFL marketing people are lusting after this becoming a thing and getting marketing dollars out of it. I mean, Travis and Taylor are a couple of very successful young people who are perfectly capable of making their own decisions. They know what they want and what they don't want, and from everything I hear, they're very good people to be around. Kelce's already a bit of a celebrity, although not on her scale. I mean, he'll learn quickly, you know, I mean, what it's like. If you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I can see why you might have mixed feelings, because, you know, it's probably fun to have a celebrity of that magnitude as a fan of your team, or watching anyway. But her relationships have had a lot of issues over the years, and yeah, I'd be a little worried about Kelce and how he's going to handle all this if it all goes bad. But he's not a kid either. I mean, he's 34 years old. In fact, the thing I would be worrying about, and I didn't even say it in here, the thing I would actually worry about is the fact that he's 34. How many more years does he have in his NFL career? 3, 5 at the outside? What are you going to do after that? And if you are together still with an extremely high-profile celebrity and you got to find another job, you know, because your whole career is over, that's going to be a hard transition, even if you don't add in the celebrity stuff. I mean, she's 33, so she's not, you know, teeny bopper anymore, but she could be going on for decades, really. I mean, she's got her, lots of things are still available for her in her future. But we'll see how it plays out. I can see why a lot of the Kansas City fans are hoping that if there is a breakup, it doesn't happen until after the Super Bowl, you know, but maybe it'll work out. I also keep in mind, one of the reasons I'm enjoying this is, if there's anything that Taylor Swift has demonstrated, is that she's quite intelligent and very powerful, and she's not going to be taken advantage of without her permission. So if the NFL people think they're getting all this stuff at her expense, yeah, I'm sure it's not like that. I'm sure she's getting as much from them as they're getting from her. I just don't know what the details are, because she'd be very good about not saying it unless it was necessary. You know, I have a lot of admiration. So I think it'll be fun. Maybe she's selling tickets for her concert film, although rumor has that she's already sold $100 million worth of tickets for that film that opens Friday. But I'm sure she knows what she's doing. So good for them. You know, I hope for the best. I hope they're happy forever. But, you know, it is all rather entertaining. I did start speculating on what, you know, increasing layers of hype would happen if the following scenarios occurred. Like, can you imagine Super Bowl week if they're still together? Can you imagine Super Bowl week if they're in the middle of a breakup? Oh, my. Or how about this? At halftime of the Super Bowl, Kelce gets down on one knee and asks her to marry him. And then she says no on live TV. Oh my goodness, social media would actually melt. I mean, the hot takes would be so hot. The whole thing would it would be the end of it. It would be great, actually, very entertaining. I don't hope that for them. I want them to be happy. I want everybody to be happy. What the heck? But at any rate, I am enjoying it, and I'm definitely enjoying how much it's annoying those curmudgeons who shouldn't be talking about pop culture events at all, present company accepted. Yeah, okay. Let's move on. I try to stay away from politics in general in the newsletter. It's more of a respite from politics. It's kind of hard to get away from. But these memes about the lack of a Speaker of the House were pretty funny. I like this one. GOP learns the hard way. Turning the bass up too high blows out your speaker. Yeah. BASS versus BASE. Yep. And then this one was pretty clever. Per the Constitution, the new temporary House Speaker is the representative from Naboo. This is an old reference now. That's going back to the Attack of the Clones, which I guess is around 2002 or 3, something like that. I mean, it's been a little while. I mean, that doesn't seem like a long time ago to me, but it is a while ago. It's about 20 years. So, all right, moving on. And that's enough of that. There's plenty of really, really funny political memes around, but I'll skip that this week. Siva Labs, the Twitter feed, the Twitter channel there. Let me show you their channel, actually. This is the YouTube channel for Siva Labs. The guy says his name is Siva, and he's based in India, and he does a ton of videos on Spring-related topics and many others as well. Lots of shorts also. So he's got 3.75K subscribers, which isn't huge, but it's still, I mean, compared to mine, that's pretty darn big. Well, this week he mentioned my channel again. You know, inspired by my SpringAI videos, I'm dipping my toes into ChatGPT open API stuff. And not only did he dip his toes in, he already built a Spring app that used that LangChain foojay tool, the API that I was mentioning. I watched the video from Devox about that, or one of the videos from Devox, and he's already built a bit of a Spring app doing it. I'm going to be looking at that a lot in the next couple of weeks. I've got a very busy week this week, but it's coming. I'll get into that. At any rate, when he mentioned my channel, I got a bunch more subscribers. As you see, I'm getting pretty close to 800. I'd love to be at 1,000 before the end of the year. My watch hours are nowhere near qualifying for the partner program. I think I have somewhere in the order of 810 watch hours, and you need 4,000, to go along with your 1,000 subscribers. And those watch hours have to be in the last calendar year, or last year actually. And my channel started at the beginning of January, so they do kind of match up with the calendar year for me. I'm hoping as the number of subscribers grows, then the watch hours will just grow naturally. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm trying to make the videos interesting and attractive to people, but that'll either happen or it won't. We'll see. Okay, so thanked him for his nice commentary, and I'm looking forward to watching what he does with all this stuff. Hello, fall, as the equinox turns, and this, of course, is a Simon and Garfunkel reference. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Soon you'll start at 5 p.m. Yeah, I can almost feel the days getting shorter. This one on inheritance said, person posted, a friend learned COBOL and received a code base where the last change was done in the 90s by his mom. And the response was, that's not how inheritance is supposed to work in programming. Frankly, I think that's perfect. That's a great way for it to work. But if a young person's working in COBOL now, I have to wonder why. Whereas working in COBOL in his mother's generation was probably state of the art. So, hey, she's probably a better coder then than he is now. But we don't know that. I just random speculation. I thought this was funny. The tweet about this, or the toot, I guess, was there was a poll that was supposed to be funny on bisexual, saying, what does that mean? 50% said twice per sexual, and 50% said once every 2 sexuals. And yeah, it's funny how 375 people voted and they split 50-50, which is perfect. But I just thought that was great. And my commentary is that there's an interface we use in Java, functional Java, called by consumer. And I sometimes make the gag that if you implement by consumer, you double your chance of getting a date Friday night or Saturday night. But I have to pick the right audience to use that gag. This one was pretty funny. Let's see if I can magnify that one. Yeah, you're late again. What happened this time? Sir, you won't believe it. And it's like, no effing way. Yeah, okay, that's a legitimate excuse, but try telling your boss that one, see where it gets you. You know, I don't know. This was very funny. Vim bindings. You know, Vim is easy once you learn a few basic key bindings, H and L to move left and right, J and K to move up and down, and Eta and Lambda to move backwards and forwards through time. I think that's C and Kappa, translation through additional temporal dimension, if applicable. And then those are all, I believe, Norse runes. I'm not even going to try. I don't even know how you'd say that. Moving left, down, up, and right through celestial spheres. And then they went from right to left to say, here's a couple more that switch deity to pantheon member to the left or right. Or then a couple more, supplicate to chosen deity or challenge chosen deity, which is dangerous. And of course, :Q to exit. Without saving. Be careful about that one. You want to do :WQ to save, right? You want to make sure you save. At any rate, that was one of the ones I stumbled across when I was reviewing my favorites list. So I'm sure there must be Emacs bindings for all of those as well, and they all begin with some meta shift, you know, with got the escape key involved, or something that'll give your hand cramps. But okay, and no doubt IntelliJ has a mapped key set for the same thing. This questionable, heartwarming story, this 2-year-old's family couldn't afford a $20,000 electric wheelchair and their insurance didn't cover it, so a high school robotics team burned down the insurer's headquarters. Yes, very good. Nice commentary. Yes, very good. This was very clever. Over many years, I have been gradually replacing all the paragraphs in the Ship of Theseus Wikipedia article. But I didn't even think to say, but are you replacing them with the exact same paragraph? I mean, you have to replace it with the same paragraph, right? The whole point of the Ship of Theseus is that every part, every board, every part of it is replaced with something that was identical. And then you get the philosophical question, is it still the Ship of Theseus? And, you know, I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader, viewer, or listener. Finally, this pair of signs said this might work. No sense in being pessimistic. It wouldn't work anyway. Well, okay, maybe not, but this organization needs your help. National Sarcasm Society, like we need your support. Yeah, maybe they don't. I don't know. So have a great week, everybody. And there's my last week. I did that functional programming in Java course and the software design one at Trinity College. This week, I've got that practical AI tools for Java developers. Feel free to jump in if you like. The link is at here. I'll show you right now. The link here is at the No Fluff Just Stuff website, and just go to virtual workshops and it is available if you like. I'm teaching a private 2-day class in Gradle. That's going to be a lot of work. I still got the Trinity College class. And this Friday and Saturday is the Northern Virginia Software Symposium, one of the No Fluff Just Stuff weekend events. So I'll be headed down to Reston, Virginia, just a suburb right outside of Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see everybody next week. Please be sure to subscribe, and there will be other videos popping up that you may find interesting. Take care. See you later.
Hey there, Des, it's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Kotlin, and Spring, oh my. Cookie, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech talks that never end.